Welcome to WooEnglish. In this story, you'll learn English through clear and simple sentences. We encourage you to write comments and share your thoughts. If you enjoy the story, please press the like button to support us. It really helps. This story is for educational purposes. We aim to help you improve your English while enjoying an inspiring tale about Boris Yeltsin. His journey offers valuable lessons about leadership, resilience, and political change, but we do not encourage or glorify any actions in the story. Let's begin the journey together. Chapter 1. Early Years. In a small village deep in the Russian countryside, a baby boy was born on February 1st, 1931. This boy was named Boris Yeltsin. His family was poor and worked hard every day. They lived in a tiny wooden house without electricity or running water. Life was tough, but Boris would grow up to become a strong and determined leader. Boris's village was called Butka, located in the Ural Mountains. The winters were very cold, with snow covering the ground for many months. Summers were short and filled with hard work. Boris's family were peasants, which means they worked on farms to grow food. They didn't have much money or many possessions, but they made do with what they had. Boris's father, Nikolai, worked as a construction worker. His mother, Klavdia, was a seamstress who made clothes for people in the village. They were hard-working and taught Boris the value of hard work from a young age. Boris also had younger siblings, and as the oldest child, he often had to help take care of them. Growing up in Butka was not easy. The village had no modern conveniences. To get water, Boris had to walk to the well and carry heavy buckets back to the house. The family cooked their meals over a wood stove, and at night they used candles and oil lamps for light. Despite these hardships, Boris's parents emphasized the importance of education and encouraged their children to study hard. Boris was an energetic and curious child. He loved exploring the forests and fields around his village. He would often lead his friends on adventures, showing early signs of leadership. Boris was also very interested in books. Even though his family did not have many books, he would read everything he could get his hands on. When Boris started school, he quickly stood out as a bright student. He was eager to learn and often asked many questions. His teachers noticed his intelligence and determination. Boris excelled in all his subjects, particularly in mathematics and literature. He was also good at sports, especially gymnastics. His strong character and leadership skills began to show as he often helped his classmates with their studies. The Soviet Union, where Boris lived, was a country going through many changes. It was a time of great political and social upheaval. The government controlled many aspects of people's lives, and there were strict rules to follow. Boris's family, like many others, faced constant struggles. There were food shortages, and sometimes they did not have enough to eat. Despite these difficulties, Boris remained focused on his studies and his dreams for the future. As Boris grew older, he became more aware of the injustices around him. He saw how hard his parents worked and how little they had. This fueled his desire to make a difference and to improve the lives of people in his country. Boris's determination to succeed only grew stronger. At home, Boris's family life was warm and supportive. His parents might not have had much money, but they were rich in love and encouragement. They taught Boris about honesty, hard work, and the importance of standing up for what is right. These lessons would stay with Boris throughout his life. In his teenage years, Boris continued to excel in school. He was often the top student in his class. His teachers admired his dedication and often encouraged him to pursue higher education. Boris dreamed of going to a university, but he knew it would not be easy. His family did not have the money to send him to college, and he would have to work hard to earn a scholarship. Boris was determined. He spent long hours studying, often late into the night. He also continued to participate in sports, which helped him develop discipline and resilience. Boris knew that he had to be strong, both physically and mentally, to achieve his goals. In 1949, Boris graduated from high school with top honours. He was one step closer to his dream of going to university. He applied to the Ural Polytechnic Institute, one of the best engineering schools in the region. Getting accepted was a great achievement, but Boris knew that the hard work was just beginning. At the Ural Polytechnic Institute, Boris studied construction and engineering. The coursework was challenging, but Boris was used to hard work. He spent long hours in the library and the laboratory, determined to succeed. His professors noticed his dedication and often praised his efforts. Boris's time at the institute was not just about academics. He also got involved in student politics and began to develop his leadership skills further. He was elected to represent his classmates and often spoke out on their behalf. Boris's strong sense of justice and his ability to inspire others made him a natural leader. Despite the many challenges he faced, Boris never lost sight of his goals. He graduated from the Ural Polytechnic Institute with a degree in engineering, ready to take on the world. Boris's early years in the small village of Butka had shaped him into a strong, determined, and compassionate individual. He was ready to face the challenges ahead and to make a difference in the world. Boris Yeltsin's early life was a story of perseverance and determination. Growing up in a poor village without modern conveniences, he learned the value of hard work and education. His intelligence, curiosity, and leadership skills set him apart from a young age. Despite the many hardships he faced, Boris remained focused on his goals and determined to succeed. His journey from a small village in the Ural Mountains to the heights of political power in Russia was just beginning. Chapter 2: The Young Rebel. Boris Yeltsin was not just a bright and hard-working student, he was also a rebel. As a teenager, he often found himself in trouble. Boris was not afraid to question authority and speak his mind. This rebellious spirit would shape his future in unexpected ways. In his teenage years, Boris lived in the small village of Butka. Life was hard, and the Soviet government controlled many aspects of daily life. Boris saw the struggles of his family and neighbours. He wondered why things were the way they were, and often questioned the rules that seemed unfair. One day, when Boris was about 15, he had an argument with a local official. The official had made a decision that Boris thought was wrong. Boris spoke up, telling the official that he was unfair. This was a bold move. In the Soviet Union, it was risky to challenge the authorities. But Boris did not care. He wanted to stand up for what was right. His parents were worried. They knew that challenging the authorities could lead to trouble. But they also admired Boris's courage. They saw that he was not just a troublemaker. He was someone who cared deeply about justice. At school, Boris continued to excel in his studies, but he also continued to get into trouble. He would argue with teachers if he thought they were wrong. He would defend his classmates if he thought they were being treated unfairly. His teachers saw his potential, but they were also frustrated by his rebellious nature. One time, Boris and his friends decided to play a prank on their teacher. They filled the classroom with balloons, knowing that the teacher did not like surprises. When the teacher walked in, she was furious. Boris and his friends got into trouble, But Boris did not regret it. He believed that life should not always be about following rules. Sometimes it should be about having fun and standing up for what you believe in. When Boris finished high school, he faced a big decision. He wanted to go to university, but he knew it would be difficult. His family did not have much money, and getting into a good university would be a challenge. But Boris was determined. He decided to apply to the Ural Polytechnic Institute, one of the best engineering schools in the region. Getting into the Ural Polytechnic Institute was not easy. Boris had to pass difficult exams and compete against many other bright students. But Boris was not afraid of hard work. He studied day and night, determined to succeed. When the exam results came out, Boris was thrilled to learn that he had been accepted. The Ural Polytechnic Institute was located in Sverdlovsk, a large city far from Boris's village. Moving to the city was a big change for Boris. Sverdlovsk was bustling with people and activity. There were tall buildings, busy streets, and many new things to see and do. Boris was excited but also a bit nervous. At the institute, Boris studied construction and engineering. The coursework was challenging, but Boris was used to hard work. He spent long hours in the library and the laboratory, determined to succeed. But Boris was not just focused on his studies. He also got involved in student politics and began to develop his leadership skills further. Boris's rebellious nature did not go away when he went to university. He continued to speak his mind and challenge authority. This often got him into trouble with the university officials. They did not like that Boris questioned their decisions and spoke out against the rules. One time, Boris organized a protest against a new rule that he thought was unfair. The rule limited the number of books students could borrow from the library. Boris believed that students should have access to as many books as they needed for their studies. He gathered a group of students and led a protest outside the library. The university officials were not happy. Boris was called to the dean's office and given a warning. But Boris did not back down. He continued to fight for what he believed was right. Boris also had a passion for sports, particularly gymnastics. He trained hard and became very skilled. His dedication to sports helped him develop discipline and resilience. These qualities would be important for his future. Despite the many challenges he faced, Boris never lost sight of his goals. He graduated from the Ural Polytechnic Institute with a degree in engineering. His rebellious spirit and determination had helped him overcome many obstacles. Boris's time at the Ural Polytechnic Institute was a period of growth and learning. He learned not just about engineering, but also about leadership and standing up for his beliefs. He made many friends and gained the respect of his peers. They admired his courage and determination. After graduating, Boris faced the next big challenge: finding a job. The Soviet Union was a difficult place to find work, especially for someone with a rebellious nature. But Boris was not worried. He knew that he had the skills and determination to succeed. Boris Yeltsin's teenage years and time at the Ural Polytechnic Institute were filled with challenges and opportunities. His rebellious nature often got him into trouble, but it also helped him stand up for what he believed was right. His determination and hard work helped him overcome many obstacles and set the stage for his future as a leader. Through his early defiance against the Soviet system, Boris learned important lessons about justice, leadership, and resilience. These lessons would guide him throughout his life and shape his journey from a rebellious teenager to a powerful leader. Boris's story is a reminder that sometimes challenging the status quo and standing up for what you believe in can lead to great things. Chapter 3: climbing the ranks. After graduating from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, Boris Yeltsin was ready to start his career. He was full of energy and eager to make a difference. Boris had studied construction and engineering, so his first job was in the construction industry. He worked as a foreman, overseeing building projects. Boris was not afraid of hard work. He arrived at the construction site early in the morning and stayed late into the night. He wanted to make sure everything was done correctly. Boris's dedication did not go unnoticed. His bosses saw that he was a reliable and hard-working employee. He quickly earned their trust and respect. One day, Boris was given a big responsibility. His team was in charge of building a large factory. This was a major project that required careful planning and coordination. Boris was excited, but also nervous. He knew that this was his chance to prove himself. Boris worked tirelessly, making sure every detail was perfect. The factory was completed on time and within budget. This success was a turning point in Boris's career. As Boris continued to excel in his job, he started to think about his future. He knew that to make a bigger impact, he needed to get involved in politics. At that time, the Communist Party controlled the Soviet Union. Boris decided to join the party, hoping to bring about change from within. Joining the Communist Party was not easy. It required a strong commitment to the party's ideals and a willingness to follow its rules. Boris had to attend meetings, participate in party activities, and demonstrate his loyalty. Despite his rebellious nature, Boris was determined to succeed. He saw the party as a way to achieve his goals and make a difference. Boris's hard work and dedication paid off. He quickly moved up the ranks within the party. His colleagues noticed his intelligence, leadership skills, and passion for reform. Boris was not afraid to speak his mind, even if it meant challenging the status quo. This made him both respected and feared within the party. One of Boris's first major roles in the Communist Party was as the head of a local construction department. In this position, he was responsible for overseeing numerous building projects. Boris used this opportunity to implement new ideas and improve efficiency. He believed in using modern techniques and technology to get the job done better and faster. Boris's innovative approach brought significant improvements to the construction projects. Buildings were completed more quickly, and the quality of the work improved. This success caught the attention of higher-ranking officials in the Communist Party. They saw Boris as a rising star and began to give him more responsibilities. As Boris's reputation grew, he was given a new challenge. He was appointed as the head of the Sverdlovsk Regional Party Committee. This was a significant promotion and a major step in his political career. Sverdlovsk was a large and important region, and managing it required strong leadership. In his new role, Boris faced many challenges. The region was struggling with economic problems, and there were many issues that needed to be addressed. Boris approached these challenges with his usual determination and energy. He worked long hours, often visiting factories and construction sites to see the problems firsthand. Boris believed in listening to the people. He wanted to understand their concerns and find solutions that would improve their lives. He organized meetings with workers, farmers, and local officials. Boris encouraged them to speak openly about their problems and suggestions. This approach was different from the usual top-down methods of the Communist Party, and it earned Boris the respect and support of many people in the region. One of Boris's key achievements in Sverdlovsk was improving housing conditions. Many people in the region lived in poor-quality homes. Boris launched a massive housing construction program to address this issue. He worked with architects and builders to design modern, comfortable apartments. The new housing developments were completed quickly, providing better living conditions for thousands of families. Boris's success in Sverdlovsk did not go unnoticed. The national leaders of the Communist Party began to take note of his achievements. They saw that Boris was not just a hard worker, but also a visionary leader who could bring about real change. This recognition led to further promotions and new opportunities. As Boris continued to climb the ranks, he never forgot his roots. He remembered the struggles of his family and the people in his village. This motivated him to keep pushing for reforms and improvements. Boris believed that the Communist Party could be a force for good if it embraced change and innovation. Boris's journey up the political ladder was not without challenges. He faced opposition from conservative elements within the party who resisted his ideas. They saw Boris as a threat to the old ways of doing things. But Boris was not easily deterred. He used his intelligence, charisma, and determination to overcome these obstacles. In the late 1970s, Boris was appointed to a high-ranking position in Moscow. This was a major milestone in his career. Moscow was the political center of the Soviet Union, and working there gave Boris a platform to influence national policies. In Moscow, Boris continued to push for reforms. He advocated for more transparency and efficiency in government operations. He believed that the Soviet Union needed to modernize to stay competitive in the world. Boris's rise through the ranks of the Communist Party was a testament to his hard work, determination, and leadership skills. He started as a construction foreman and rose to become a significant political figure. Along the way, he earned the respect of his colleagues and the people he served. Boris's journey was far from over, but his early career laid the foundation for his future achievements. Through his story, we learn the importance of perseverance, hard work, and standing up for what we believe in. Boris Yeltsin's early career teaches us that with determination and vision, we can overcome obstacles and achieve great things. His rise through the ranks of the Communist Party was just the beginning of his journey to become one of Russia's most influential leaders. Chapter 4. The Reformer. Boris Yeltsin's rise through the ranks of the Communist Party brought him to a position where he could make a difference. As a high-ranking party official, Boris saw many problems within the Soviet system. He believed that change was necessary to improve the lives of the people. Boris was determined to push for significant reforms, even if it meant facing opposition. In Moscow, Boris worked hard to reduce corruption and inefficiency. He noticed that many officials used their positions for personal gain rather than serving the people. Boris wanted to change this. He believed that the government should be honest and efficient. Boris started by investigating cases of corruption. He uncovered several instances where officials had stolen money or misused resources. Boris took action, removing corrupt officials from their positions and ensuring they were punished. This made him many enemies. But Boris did not care. He was determined to do what was right. One of Boris's first major reforms was to improve transparency in government operations. He believed that the people had a right to know what their leaders were doing. Boris introduced measures to make government activities more open and accessible. He encouraged officials to communicate with the public and explain their decisions. Boris also worked on improving efficiency within the government. He noticed that many projects were delayed or poorly managed. Boris believed that better planning and organization were needed. He introduced new procedures to ensure that projects were completed on time and within budget. Boris's reforms started to show results. Projects were finished more quickly, and the quality of work improved. People began to see that change was possible. However, not everyone was happy with Boris's reforms. Many conservative leaders in the Communist Party resisted his ideas. They believed in maintaining the old ways and saw Boris as a threat to their power. These leaders had grown comfortable with the existing system and did not want things to change. Boris faced frequent clashes with these conservative leaders. They tried to block his reforms and undermine his efforts. Meetings often became heated, with Boris arguing passionately for change. Despite the opposition, Boris refused to back down. He believed in his vision and was determined to fight for it. One of the most significant conflicts came when Boris proposed a major overhaul of the party structure. He wanted to introduce more democratic processes within the party. Boris believed that officials should be elected based on their abilities and commitment to serving the people rather than their loyalty to party leaders. This proposal caused an uproar. Conservative leaders saw it as a direct challenge to their authority. They argued that the party should remain the way it was, with decisions made by a small group of top leaders. Boris disagreed. He believed that a more democratic party would be stronger and more effective. The debate over this proposal was intense. Boris spoke passionately about the need for change, while his opponents argued for maintaining the status quo. In the end, Boris's proposal was rejected. The conservative leaders were too powerful, and they were not ready to embrace such a radical change. Despite this setback, Boris did not give up. He continued to push for reforms, finding other ways to make a difference. He worked on smaller, more manageable projects, gradually building support for his ideas. Boris believed that even small changes could have a big impact. One of Boris's successful initiatives was a program to improve housing conditions. Many people in the Soviet Union lived in poor-quality apartments. Boris launched a project to build new, modern housing for workers and their families. The project was a success, providing better living conditions for thousands of people. Boris also focused on improving healthcare and education. He believed that everyone should have access to good healthcare and quality education. Boris introduced reforms to improve the efficiency of hospitals and schools. He worked to ensure that doctors and teachers were properly trained and well-equipped. Boris's efforts started to gain recognition. People saw that he was a leader who cared about their well-being. His popularity grew, and he began to build a network of supporters. These supporters shared Boris's vision for a better future and were willing to help him achieve his goals. However, the conservative leaders continued to oppose Boris. They saw him as a threat to their power and influence. They tried to discredit him, spreading rumors and making false accusations. Boris faced constant attacks, but he remained focused on his mission. One of the most challenging moments came when Boris was called to a high-level meeting with the top leaders of the Communist Party. The meeting was tense, with the leaders accusing Boris of undermining the party. They demanded that he stop his reforms and follow the party line. Boris stood his ground. He spoke passionately about the need for change and the importance of serving the people. He argued that the party needed to adapt and evolve to meet the needs of the future. The leaders were not convinced, but Boris's courage and determination made an impact. After the meeting, Boris knew that his path would not be easy. The opposition was strong, and the road ahead was filled with challenges. But Boris was not discouraged. He believed in his vision and was willing to fight for it. Boris Yeltsin's role as a reformer within the Communist Party was marked by significant challenges and conflicts. His efforts to reduce corruption and improve efficiency were met with resistance from conservative leaders. Despite the opposition, Boris remained committed to his vision of a better future. His determination and courage inspired many, and his reforms started to make a difference. Boris's story teaches us the importance of perseverance and the courage to stand up for what we believe in. Even in the face of strong opposition, Boris continued to fight for his vision of a better and more just society. His journey as a reformer was just beginning, and the challenges he faced would shape his path to becoming one of Russia's most influential leaders. Chapter 5. Moscow's Mayor. Description. This chapter focuses on Yeltsin's tenure as the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee, his achievements and the beginning of his high-profile conflicts with the Central Soviet leadership. Content. Boris became the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee in 1985. He implemented several popular reforms and gained a reputation as a man of the people. However, his growing popularity and outspoken nature put him at odds with the Soviet leadership, including Mikhail Gorbachev. Chapter 5. Moscow's Mayor. In 1985, Boris Yeltsin received a significant promotion. He was appointed as the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee. This position was one of the most powerful in the Soviet Union, as Moscow was the capital and the heart of the country. Boris was excited about this new challenge and eager to make a difference. As soon as he took office, Boris began to implement several reforms. He believed that the city needed to be more efficient and responsive to the needs of its people. One of his first actions was to improve the living conditions in Moscow. Many of the city's buildings were old and in poor condition. Boris launched a massive renovation project to repair and upgrade these buildings. He ensured that new apartments were built quickly to provide better housing for the residents. Boris also focused on cleaning up the city. Moscow was plagued by pollution and garbage. He organized large-scale cleanup campaigns, mobilizing thousands of volunteers to help. Boris himself often joined these efforts, working alongside the volunteers to pick up trash and plant trees. His hands-on approach earned him the admiration of many Muscovites. Public transportation was another area where Boris made significant improvements. The city's buses and trains were overcrowded and often late. Boris worked to increase the number of vehicles and improve their schedules. He also pushed for better maintenance to ensure that the transportation system was reliable and safe. These changes made a noticeable difference in the daily lives of the people. Boris's reforms extended to the workplace as well. He believed that the city's factories and businesses needed to be more productive and less wasteful. He introduced measures to reduce bureaucracy and streamline operations. He encouraged managers to listen to their workers and address their concerns. This approach led to increased efficiency and higher morale among the workers. However, Boris's reforms were not just about improving the city's infrastructure and economy. He also wanted to make the government more transparent and accountable. He believed that the people had a right to know what their leaders were doing and how decisions were made. Boris held regular meetings with citizens, listening to their complaints and suggestions. He encouraged officials to be open and honest in their dealings with the public. Boris's popularity grew rapidly. People saw him as a leader who genuinely cared about their well-being. His direct and straightforward style resonated with many, and he became known as a man of the people. However, his growing popularity also made him a target for criticism from the Central Soviet leadership. At that time, Mikhail Gorbachev was the leader of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev had introduced his own set of reforms, known as perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness. While Boris and Gorbachev both wanted to bring change to the Soviet Union, their approaches were different. Boris was more aggressive and outspoken, while Gorbachev preferred a more cautious and controlled approach. The first signs of conflict between Boris and the central leadership appeared when Boris started criticizing the slow pace of Gorbachev's reforms. Boris felt that Gorbachev was not doing enough to address the problems facing the country. He believed that more radical changes were needed to improve the economy and reduce corruption. Boris's public criticism did not sit well with Gorbachev and other senior leaders. Despite the growing tension, Boris continued to push for more reforms. He introduced new measures to combat corruption in the city's administration. He established a special task force to investigate and prosecute corrupt officials. This move was popular with the public, but angered many within the party who had benefited from the old system. Boris's outspoken nature also led to conflicts within the Moscow City Party Committee. Many of his colleagues were uncomfortable with his aggressive style and his constant push for change. They felt that Boris was too reckless and that his actions were creating instability. Some even accused him of trying to undermine the party. The tension reached a peak in 1987. During a high-profile meeting of the Communist Party, Boris gave a speech criticizing the slow pace of reform and the resistance to change within the party. He called for more decisive action to address the country's problems. His speech was met with silence and then strong disapproval from the party leadership. Gorbachev and other senior leaders were furious. They saw Boris's speech as a direct challenge to their authority. Shortly after the meeting, Boris was removed from his position as the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee. This was a significant blow to his career. Many thought that this would be the end of Boris Yeltsin's political life. However, Boris was not ready to give up. He believed in his vision for a better Russia and was determined to continue his fight for reform. After his removal, Boris faced a difficult period. He was ostracized by many of his former colleagues and struggled to find a new role. But Boris did not let this setback deter him. He continued to speak out about the need for change. He wrote articles and gave interviews, criticizing the government and advocating for more radical reforms. Boris's determination paid off. In 1989, he was elected to the newly created Congress of People's Deputies, the Soviet Union's new legislative body. This gave him a platform to continue his fight for reform. Boris used his position to push for greater transparency, democracy, and economic change. Boris Yeltsin's tenure as the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee was marked by significant achievements and high-profile conflicts. His reforms improved the lives of many Muscovites and earned him a reputation as a man of the people. However, his outspoken nature and aggressive push for change put him at odds with the Central Soviet leadership, leading to his removal from office. You're listening to WooEnglish. If you enjoyed learning about Boris Yeltsin's remarkable journey, his groundbreaking contributions to Russia's political landscape, and the inspiring lessons from his life, please like and comment on the story. Chapter 6. Fall from Grace. Boris Yeltsin's time as the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee was full of successes and reforms. However, it was also marked by conflicts with the Central Soviet leadership. In 1987, these conflicts reached a breaking point. Boris's outspoken nature and his constant push for change had made many powerful enemies. During a high-profile meeting of the Communist Party, Boris gave a passionate speech. He criticized the slow pace of reforms and accused the party leadership of resisting necessary changes. He argued that more needed to be done to address corruption and inefficiency. His speech shocked many in the room. Boris was not afraid to speak the truth, even if it meant challenging the highest leaders in the Soviet Union. Boris's boldness came at a price. Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union, and other top officials were furious. They saw Boris's speech as a direct attack on their authority. They decided that Boris had gone too far. Shortly after the meeting, Boris was removed from his position as the first secretary of the Moscow City Party Committee. This was a severe blow to his career. The news of Boris's dismissal spread quickly. Many people in Moscow were shocked and disappointed. Boris had become a popular figure, known for his efforts to improve the city and fight corruption. His removal was seen by many as a punishment for his honesty and dedication to reform. For Boris, this was a moment of deep personal and professional crisis. He had worked hard to make a difference, and now he was being pushed aside. But Boris was not one to give up easily. He refused to be silenced and decided to continue his fight for reform from the sidelines. Boris faced a difficult period after his dismissal. He was no longer in a position of power and had lost many of the privileges that came with his high-ranking job. His enemies within the party tried to isolate him, hoping that he would fade into obscurity. But Boris was determined to stay relevant. He began writing articles and giving interviews where he continued to criticize the Soviet leadership and advocate for change. He spoke about the need for greater transparency, democracy, and economic reform. His words resonated with many people who were frustrated with the slow pace of change in the country. Boris also took every opportunity to connect with the people. He attended public meetings and rallies where he listened to the concerns of ordinary citizens. He wanted to understand their struggles and find ways to address them. This grassroots approach helped Boris maintain his popularity and build a network of supporters. One of the most challenging aspects of this period for Boris was dealing with the constant attacks from his political enemies. They spread rumors and made false accusations, trying to discredit him. Boris had to be strong and resilient to withstand these attacks. He knew that his fight for reform was important and that he could not afford to give up. Despite the challenges, Boris found ways to stay involved in politics. In 1989, he saw an opportunity to return to the political stage. The Soviet Union was holding elections for a new legislative body called the Congress of People's Deputies. Boris decided to run for a seat. The campaign was tough. Boris faced strong opposition from the party leadership, who did not want him to win. They used various tactics to undermine his campaign, but Boris was determined. He travelled around the country, speaking to people and sharing his vision for a better future. His message of reform and transparency resonated with many voters. On election day, Boris won a seat in the Congress of People's Deputies. This was a significant victory for him. It meant that he could continue his fight for reform from within the government. Boris used his new position to push for greater openness and democracy. He was a vocal advocate for change, often clashing with other members of the Congress who resisted his ideas. Boris's journey during this period was marked by both setbacks and triumphs. His dismissal from the Moscow Post was a dramatic fall from grace. But it did not end his career. Instead, it became a turning point that strengthened his resolve to fight for what he believed in. Boris's story during this time is a powerful lesson in resilience and determination. Despite facing significant obstacles, he refused to give up. He continued to speak out and work towards his vision of a better Soviet Union. His efforts during this period laid the groundwork for his future successes. Boris's ability to connect with the people and his unwavering commitment to reform made him a unique figure in Soviet politics. He showed that true leadership is not just about holding a position of power, but about standing up for what is right, even in the face of adversity. As Boris continued his journey, he would face even greater challenges and opportunities. But the lessons he learned during this difficult period would serve him well. His fall from grace in 1987 was not the end, but rather a new beginning in his fight for a better future for his country. Through Boris Yeltsin's story, we learn the importance of staying true to our principles and never giving up, no matter how difficult the circumstances. His resilience and determination are inspiring examples of how one person can make a difference, even in the face of great adversity. Boris's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and the belief in a better future. Chapter 7. The Comeback. In the late 1980s, Boris Yeltsin's political career seemed to be over. He had been removed from his powerful position in Moscow, and many thought he would fade into obscurity. However, Boris was not ready to give up. He believed in his vision for a better Russia and was determined to continue his fight for reform. Boris's opportunity for a comeback came in 1989, when the Soviet Union announced elections for a new legislative body called the Congress of People's Deputies. This was part of Mikhail Gorbachev's efforts to introduce more democratic processes in the country. Boris saw this as a chance to return to politics and push for the changes he believed were necessary. Running for a seat in the Congress was not easy. Boris faced strong opposition from the Communist Party leadership, who did not want him to win. They used various tactics to undermine his campaign, including spreading rumours and trying to block his access to the media. But Boris was determined. He travelled around the country, speaking to people and sharing his vision for the future. Boris's message resonated with many Russians who were frustrated with the slow pace of reform and the ongoing problems in the country. They saw Boris as a leader who was not afraid to speak the truth and stand up to the powerful. His campaign gained momentum, and on election day, Boris won a seat in the Congress of People's Deputies. This victory was a significant turning point for Boris. It marked his return to the political stage and gave him a platform to continue his fight for reform. In the Congress, Boris quickly became a leading figure in the opposition. He was outspoken and passionate, often challenging the policies of the Communist Party. Boris's speeches in the Congress were powerful and direct. He spoke about the need for greater transparency, democracy, and economic reform. He criticized the government for its failures and called for more radical changes to address the country's problems. His words inspired many and earned him the respect of his colleagues and the public. Despite the challenges he faced, Boris remained focused on his goals. He knew that change would not come easily, but he was determined to keep pushing for it. He worked tirelessly, attending meetings, giving interviews, and connecting with people across the country. His dedication and resilience made him a symbol of hope for many Russians. One of Boris's key achievements during this time was his role in the creation of the Russian Federation's new political structures. He was a strong advocate for greater autonomy for Russia within the Soviet Union. He believed that Russia should have more control over its own affairs and that this would lead to better governance and economic growth. Boris's efforts paid off. In 1990, he was elected as the chairman of the Supreme Soviet of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR, the highest legislative body in Russia. This position gave Boris even more influence and a greater platform to push for his reforms. As chairman, Boris continued to advocate for change. He worked to implement policies that would improve the economy, reduce corruption, and increase political freedoms. He faced significant opposition from conservative elements within the government, but Boris was not deterred. He used his position to push for more democratic processes and greater accountability. Boris's leadership during this time was critical in shaping the future of Russia. He played a key role in the transition from a Soviet republic to an independent Russian state. His efforts helped lay the foundation for the democratic and economic reforms that would come in the following years. Boris's political comeback was not just about his personal success. It was about his vision for a better Russia and his commitment to making that vision a reality. His resilience and determination inspired many and showed that even in the face of significant challenges, it is possible to achieve great things. Boris's story is a powerful example of the importance of perseverance and the courage to stand up for what you believe in. Despite being pushed aside and facing numerous obstacles, Boris never gave up on his vision for a better future. His comeback was a testament to his strength and determination. Through Boris Yeltsin's journey, we learn the value of resilience and the power of never giving up. His story teaches us that even when the odds are against us, it is possible to make a difference and achieve our goals. Boris's political comeback was a significant moment in Russian history, marking the rise of a leader who would play a crucial role in the country's transition to democracy. Boris's determination to fight for what he believed in, even when it seemed impossible, is an inspiring lesson for us all. His story reminds us that true leadership is about more than just holding a position of power. It is about standing up for what is right and working tirelessly to make a positive impact. Boris Yeltsin's comeback is a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of never giving up on our dreams. Chapter 8. The Coup. In August 1991, the Soviet Union was in turmoil. The country was struggling with economic problems, and many people were unhappy with the government. Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union, was pushing for reforms, but not everyone agreed with his ideas. Some hardline communists wanted to go back to the old ways. They believed that the reforms were weakening the country. On August 19, 1991, a group of these hardline communists attempted a coup. They wanted to take control of the government and stop Gorbachev's reforms. Early in the morning, tanks and soldiers took to the streets of Moscow. The coup leaders announced that they had taken power. They said that Gorbachev was ill and could no longer govern. In reality, they had placed him under house arrest at his vacation home in Crimea. The coup leaders imposed a state of emergency. They banned demonstrations and gatherings. They also took control of the media, hoping to silence any opposition. Many people were afraid. They remembered the days of repression and were unsure what would happen next. Boris Yeltsin, who was then the president of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR, was in his office in the Russian Parliament building, known as the White House. When he heard about the coup, he knew he had to act quickly. He believed in democracy and was determined to resist the coup. Boris decided to make a stand. He called his supporters and told them to come to the White House. He wanted to show that the people were against the coup. Thousands of people began to gather outside the building. They came to support Boris and defend their freedom. In a dramatic moment, Boris climbed onto a tank in front of the White House. Surrounded by his supporters and soldiers who were loyal to him, he addressed the crowd. He spoke passionately about the need to defend democracy. He called on the people to resist the coup and not to be afraid. "Comrades," Boris said, "we are dealing with a coup d'etat. We cannot allow them to take away our freedom. We must stand together and defend our rights. Do not be afraid. We are strong when we are united." The image of Boris standing on the tank, speaking to the crowd, became a powerful symbol of resistance. It was broadcast on television and seen by millions of people. His courage and determination inspired many. People began to gather in other cities to show their support for Boris and their opposition to the coup. The coup leaders were losing control. They had hoped that the people would be too afraid to resist, but Boris's actions had changed everything. The soldiers who had been sent to enforce the coup were unsure what to do. Many of them did not want to fire on their fellow citizens. As the resistance grew, the coup leaders tried to negotiate with Boris. They offered him a position in their government if he would support them. Boris refused. He knew that supporting the coup would betray everything he stood for. He continued to call for resistance and urged the people to remain peaceful but firm. On August 21st, just 2 days after the coup began, it started to collapse. The soldiers who had been sent to enforce the state of emergency began to withdraw. They joined the people in supporting Boris and Gorbachev's government. The coup leaders realized that they had failed. They fled Moscow, and Gorbachev was freed from house arrest. Boris's leadership during the coup was crucial. His quick actions and his ability to inspire the people played a key role in the failure of the coup. He showed that he was a strong leader who was willing to stand up for what he believed in, even in the face of great danger. The failure of the coup had significant consequences for the Soviet Union. It weakened the power of the Communist Party and sped up the process of reform. Many of the Soviet republics, including Russia, moved towards independence. The Soviet Union was dissolving, and a new era was beginning. Boris Yeltsin emerged from the crisis as a national hero. He had shown incredible bravery and determination. His actions during the coup solidified his status as a leader who was committed to democracy and the well-being of his people. Boris's leadership during this critical moment helped shape the future of Russia and the other former Soviet republics. The story of the 1991 coup is a powerful example of the importance of courage and leadership. Boris Yeltsin's actions during those tense days showed that one person could make a difference. His ability to inspire and mobilize the people was crucial in defeating the coup and defending democracy. Chapter 9. President of Russia. In 1991, Boris Yeltsin achieved a significant milestone in his political career. He was elected as the first president of the Russian Federation. This was a historic moment for Russia. For the first time, the country had a leader chosen through democratic elections. Boris's victory was a testament to his popularity and the people's desire for change. The election took place on June 12, 1991. Boris won with a large majority, receiving 57% of the vote. This showed that many Russians believed in his vision for the future. They were tired of the old communist system and wanted a leader who could bring about real change. Boris's promises of democracy, economic reform, and an end to corruption resonated with the voters. Becoming president was a great honor, but it also came with many challenges. The Soviet Union was in the process of dissolving, and Russia was facing a period of significant transition. Moving from a communist state to a democratic society was not going to be easy. Boris knew that he had a difficult job ahead of him. One of the first challenges Boris faced was economic instability. The Soviet economy was in a terrible state. Factories were closing and people were losing their jobs. There were shortages of basic goods and inflation was skyrocketing. Boris knew that he needed to take immediate action to stabilize the economy. He decided to implement a series of radical economic reforms. These reforms were known as shock therapy. The idea was to quickly transition from a planned economy to a market economy. Boris hoped that by introducing market principles, he could stimulate growth and improve living standards. The reforms included removing price controls, allowing private ownership of businesses, and opening up the economy to foreign investment. These changes were necessary, but they were also painful. Prices soared, and many people struggled to afford basic necessities. Unemployment rose as inefficient factories closed down. The sudden changes created a lot of hardship for ordinary Russians. Boris knew that the reforms were difficult, but he believed they were necessary for the long-term health of the economy. He tried to explain this to the people, but many were frustrated and angry. They had hoped for quick improvements, but instead they faced new challenges. In addition to economic problems, Boris faced significant political opposition. Many members of the old Communist Party were still powerful, and they resisted his reforms. They did not want to lose their influence and were opposed to the changes Boris was making. This led to frequent clashes in the parliament and within the government. Boris had to navigate a complex political landscape. He needed to build alliances with those who supported his vision while managing the opposition. He used his charisma and determination to persuade others to join his cause. Despite the difficulties, Boris remained focused on his goal of transforming Russia into a democratic society. One of the most significant political challenges came in 1993. Tensions between Boris and the parliament reached a breaking point. The parliament, dominated by his opponents, tried to block his reforms. Boris believed that the parliament was standing in the way of progress. He decided to dissolve it and call for new elections. This decision led to a major political crisis. Opponents accused Boris of overstepping his authority. Protests erupted in Moscow, and the situation became increasingly tense. In a dramatic showdown, Boris ordered the army to surround the parliament building. After a brief but violent confrontation, the crisis was resolved in Boris's favour. The parliament was dissolved, and new elections were held. This event showed Boris's determination and willingness to take bold actions to achieve his goals. However, it also highlighted the deep divisions within Russian society and the challenges of building a new political system. Despite these difficulties, Boris made significant progress in his early presidency. He worked to establish democratic institutions and promote political freedoms. For the first time, Russians could enjoy freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to protest. These changes were crucial for the development of a democratic society. Boris also focused on improving Russia's international relations. He wanted to integrate Russia into the global community and build strong ties with other countries. He worked to improve relations with the United States and Europe, seeking economic and political cooperation. One of the key aspects of Boris's foreign policy was the reduction of nuclear weapons. He believed that reducing the nuclear threat was essential for global security. In 1993, he signed the START II treaty with the United States, which aimed to significantly reduce the number of nuclear warheads. Boris's leadership during this period was marked by both successes and challenges. His bold reforms laid the groundwork for a market economy, but they also created significant hardships. His efforts to build democratic institutions were crucial, but political opposition and social unrest made progress difficult. Through it all, Boris remained committed to his vision of a democratic and prosperous Russia. He believed that the sacrifices and hardships of the present were necessary to build a better future. His resilience and determination inspired many, even as they faced the challenges of transition. Boris Yeltsin's early presidency was a time of great change and uncertainty. The transition from communism to democracy was fraught with challenges, but it was also a period of significant progress. Boris's leadership played a crucial role in shaping the future of Russia. His efforts to promote democracy, economic reform, and international cooperation were essential for the country's development. Chapter 10. Economic Turmoil. In the early 1990s, Russia faced a critical moment in its history. Boris Yeltsin, now the first president of the Russian Federation, knew that the country needed major changes to move away from its communist past. One of the most pressing issues was the economy. The Soviet system of central planning had left Russia's economy in a terrible state, with factories closing, people losing jobs, and shortages of basic goods. Boris decided to implement a series of radical economic reforms known as shock therapy to quickly transition to a market economy. Shock therapy was a bold and risky plan. It involved removing price controls, which meant that prices for goods and services would be set by the market rather than the government. This was intended to encourage competition and improve efficiency. Additionally, the reforms allowed private ownership of businesses and opened up the economy to foreign investment. Boris believed that these changes were necessary to stimulate economic growth and improve living standards. However, the immediate effects of shock therapy were harsh. When price controls were lifted, prices for basic goods skyrocketed. Ordinary Russians found that they could no longer afford the things they needed, such as food and clothing. Inflation soared, wiping out the value of people's savings. Many who had worked hard to save money saw their life savings disappear almost overnight. The rapid changes also led to widespread unemployment, as inefficient factories and businesses closed down, unable to compete in the new market economy. The impact on everyday life was profound. People stood in long lines at stores, hoping to buy essential items before prices went up even more. Pensions and wages, which had been barely enough before, became almost worthless. Families struggled to make ends meet, and the sense of uncertainty and fear grew. The hardships caused by the economic reforms led to widespread discontent among the Russian population. Many people felt betrayed and angry. They had supported Boris Yeltsin because they believed in his vision for a better future, but now they were facing severe difficulties. Protests and strikes became common as people demanded better conditions and more support from the government. Boris understood the people's frustration, but he believed that the pain of shock therapy was a necessary step towards building a stronger economy. He tried to explain to the public that these reforms, though painful, would eventually lead to a better life for everyone. He asked for patience and understanding, but it was not easy for people to accept these hardships. The discontent also led to increasing opposition to Boris's leadership. Many of his political opponents seized the opportunity to criticize his policies and blame him for the country's problems. The Communist Party, which had lost power with the fall of the Soviet Union, began to gain support again by promising to reverse the reforms and restore stability. Boris found himself in a constant struggle to defend his policies and maintain his political position. In response to the growing opposition, Boris made efforts to alleviate some of the economic pain. He introduced social programs to help the most vulnerable, such as pensioners and low-income families. However, the resources available were limited, and these measures were not enough to fully address the widespread suffering. The privatization of state-owned enterprises was another major aspect of the economic reforms. The government sold off many of the large state-owned companies to private investors. The goal was to create a more dynamic and competitive economy. However, the process was chaotic and often corrupt. A few well-connected individuals, later known as oligarchs, managed to acquire vast wealth by buying these companies at very low prices. This created a stark divide between the new wealthy elite and the majority of the population, who continued to struggle. Despite the difficulties, Boris remained committed to his vision of a market economy. He believed that the reforms would eventually bear fruit, leading to greater prosperity and freedom for the Russian people. His determination was both a strength and a source of criticism. Many accused him of being out of touch with the suffering of ordinary Russians. The economic turmoil of the early 1990s was a time of great uncertainty and hardship for Russia. Boris Yeltsin's radical reforms were intended to transform the economy and set the country on a path to growth and stability. However, the immediate effects were devastating for many people. Inflation, unemployment, and poverty became widespread, leading to anger and discontent. Chapter 11. Political Struggles. Boris Yeltsin's presidency was marked by many challenges, and one of the most significant was his ongoing conflict with the Russian parliament. The parliament, also known as the Supreme Soviet, was filled with members who opposed Boris's reforms. They wanted to return to the old ways of the Soviet Union, while Boris was determined to push forward with his plans for a new democratic Russia. The tension between Boris and the parliament reached a boiling point in 1993. The parliament repeatedly blocked Boris's reforms, making it nearly impossible for him to govern effectively. In response, Boris decided to dissolve the parliament and call for new elections. This was a bold and controversial move, and it sparked a major political crisis. The parliament refused to accept Boris's decision. They accused him of acting like a dictator and declared that he had no right to dissolve them. In a dramatic escalation, the parliament members barricaded themselves inside the parliament building, known as the White House, and called on their supporters to defend them. The situation quickly turned violent. Protesters gathered outside the White House, clashing with police and military forces. The standoff lasted for several days, with both sides refusing to back down. Boris realized that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous and decided to take decisive action. On October 4, 1993, Boris ordered the military to storm the White House. Tanks rolled through the streets of Moscow, and gunfire echoed through the city. The violent confrontation resulted in many casualties, and the images of the burning White House were broadcast around the world. In the end, the military took control of the building, and the rebellion was crushed. This event was a turning point in Boris's presidency. While he had successfully asserted his authority, the violent suppression of the parliament damaged his reputation. Many Russians were shocked by the use of force and began to question Boris's commitment to democracy. The crisis highlighted the deep divisions within Russian society and the difficulties of building a new political system. Another major challenge during Boris's presidency was the Chechen War. Chechnya, a small region in the Caucasus Mountains, declared its independence from Russia in 1991. Boris was determined to keep the country united and refused to recognize Chechnya's independence. In 1994, he launched a military campaign to regain control of the region. The war in Chechnya was brutal and bloody. the Russian military faced fierce resistance from Chechen fighters, who were determined to defend their homeland. The conflict resulted in significant loss of life on both sides and caused widespread destruction. Images of the devastation and suffering in Chechnya were broadcast on television, further eroding Boris's popularity. The war dragged on for years, with no clear victory in sight. Many Russians began to question the wisdom of the conflict and called for a peaceful resolution. Boris faced intense criticism from both the public and his political opponents. The Chechen War became a symbol of the difficulties and failures of his presidency. In addition to these political struggles, Boris's health began to decline. He had always been a vigorous and energetic leader, but the stress of governing and the strain of his responsibilities took a toll on his body. Boris suffered from a series of health problems, including heart issues, which affected his ability to govern effectively. Boris's declining health was a source of concern for many Russians. They worried about whether he could continue to lead the country during such a critical time. Despite his health problems, Boris remained determined to fulfill his duties as president. He continued to work long hours and pushed forward with his reforms, even when it was clear that he was struggling. The combination of political conflicts, the Chechen War, and Boris's declining health created a period of intense difficulty for Russia. The country was facing significant challenges on multiple fronts, and many people were uncertain about the future. Despite these struggles, Boris never gave up on his vision for Russia. He believed in the importance of democracy and was committed to building a better future for the country. His resilience and determination were inspiring, even in the face of overwhelming obstacles. Boris's story during this period teaches us valuable lessons about leadership and perseverance. It shows that leading a country through times of crisis is incredibly challenging and requires great strength and determination. Boris faced many setbacks and criticisms, but he remained committed to his principles and continued to fight for what he believed in. Chapter 12: Legacy and Resignation. As the year 1999 drew to a close, Boris Yeltsin made a surprising and historic decision. On December 31st, he announced his resignation as President of Russia. This decision marked the end of a significant era in Russian history. Boris handed over power to his chosen successor, Vladimir Putin, who was then the Prime Minister. Boris's resignation was a moment of reflection on his legacy, a legacy that was complex and multifaceted. Boris Yeltsin's presidency was marked by both great achievements and significant challenges. One of his most notable accomplishments was his role in dismantling the Soviet Union. When Boris first took office, the Soviet Union was a vast and powerful empire. However, it was also a place of repression and lack of freedom. Boris believed in democracy and the rights of the people, and he worked tirelessly to bring about change. In 1991, after the failure of the hardline communist coup, Boris played a crucial role in dissolving the Soviet Union. He supported the independence of the former Soviet republics, allowing them to become separate, sovereign nations. This was a bold move that reshaped the political landscape of Eastern Europe and the world. Boris also introduced significant democratic reforms in Russia. He pushed for free elections, freedom of the press, and the establishment of a multi-party political system. These changes were revolutionary in a country that had been ruled by a single party for decades. Under Boris's leadership, Russians experienced new freedoms that had been unimaginable just a few years earlier. However, Boris's presidency was also marked by significant economic turmoil. The transition from a planned economy to a market economy was not smooth. His shock therapy reforms, while intended to jumpstart the economy, led to widespread hardship. Prices soared, inflation wiped out savings, and many people lost their jobs. The economic instability caused immense suffering and led to widespread discontent. The privatization process, meant to transfer state-owned enterprises to private hands, was marred by corruption. A small group of well-connected individuals, known as oligarchs, acquired vast wealth, while many ordinary Russians struggled to survive. This created a stark divide between the rich and the poor, contributing to social unrest. Boris's political struggles also defined his presidency. His conflicts with the parliament, culminating in the violent confrontation in 1993, showed his determination to push through reforms, but also highlighted the deep divisions in Russian society. The Chechen War further eroded his popularity, as the brutal conflict caused immense suffering and highlighted the challenges of maintaining national unity. Boris's health problems added another layer of complexity to his presidency. Frequent illnesses and hospitalizations raised concerns about his ability to lead. Despite these issues, Boris remained dedicated to his duties, often pushing himself beyond his physical limits. When Boris announced his resignation, he did so with a sense of humility and responsibility. In his televised address to the nation, he apologized for not achieving everything he had hoped for and for the mistakes made during his presidency. He expressed his hope for a better future for Russia and entrusted that future to Vladimir Putin, a relatively unknown figure at the time. Boris's resignation was both a personal and political decision. He recognized that his health was failing and that new leadership was needed to guide Russia into the next century. By stepping down voluntarily, he set a precedent for the peaceful transfer of power, a critical aspect of a functioning democracy. Vladimir Putin, who took over as acting president, quickly began to consolidate power. While his leadership style was different from Boris's, he inherited a country that had been fundamentally transformed by Boris's reforms. The political and economic foundations laid during Boris's presidency continued to shape Russia's trajectory. Boris Yeltsin's legacy is a complex one. He is remembered as a pivotal figure who played a key role in ending the Soviet Union and introducing democratic reforms. His vision and courage helped usher in a new era of freedom for Russia. However, his presidency also brought economic hardship and political instability, which left a lasting impact on the country. Boris's story is a powerful lesson in leadership, resilience, and the complexities of political change. His determination to bring about reform, even in the face of immense challenges, is inspiring. He showed that true leadership involves making difficult decisions and sometimes facing harsh criticism for the greater good. Boris Yeltsin remains a significant figure in Russian history. His efforts to promote democracy and freedom have left a lasting legacy. Despite the challenges and controversies of his presidency, his contributions to the development of modern Russia cannot be overlooked. As we reflect on Boris's legacy, we can appreciate the complexities of his leadership. He was a man of vision and determination, willing to take bold steps to achieve his goals. His story reminds us that the path to progress is often fraught with difficulties, but with resilience and commitment, meaningful change is possible. Boris Yeltsin's resignation marked the end of an era, but his impact on Russia and the world continues to be felt. His legacy is a testament to the power of leadership and the enduring hope for a better future. Through his achievements and failures, Boris's journey offers valuable lessons for future generations and serves as a reminder of the importance of courage and vision in shaping history.